Hey guys, it's Chris, the Natural Progressive. I'm so excited to have yet again one of my very, very favorite authors, environmental activists, and eco philosophers, Derrick Jensen, here to talk today about the documentary Planet of the Humans. He jumped the gun. He had scooped everybody on this, and it's just too bad that Bright Green Lies was not the opening of this conversation with the major media, but he was the original thought process, at least in my mind. So welcome, Derrick. Welcome to the show. Say hi to everybody.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on again. It's always
Anytime.
with you.
I love having you on. So I just watched your interview with Jeff Gibbs, and that was absolutely fantastic and trying to get to the heart of it. Initial thoughts, maybe like compared to your philosophy and then watching Planet of the Humans, do you have any differences or I don't know, different thoughts?
Um, honestly, um, I wasn't excited to watch it in the first place because I have a long history of being very disappointed by environmental documentaries. I remember one of them several years ago, Food Inc., did a pretty good job of laying out the horrors of the industrial food system. And then their solution at the end was that uh, we buy organic yogurt from Walmart. And so you see this all the time where there will be a film will lay out the problems very well, and then the solutions are inflate your tires or whatever.
Yeah, they're putting it on the people instead of the system.
Well,
Like it's your fault.
yes, I can. Yeah, thank you for making that distinction. First off, putting it on people instead of the system, and second, um, having responses that are completely incommensurate with the scale of the problem. For example, I mean, suggesting people inflate their tires more to prevent global warming. I mean, it's just completely nuts.
Yeah, ridiculous. Or prevent biodiversity loss, or
Yeah,
to prevent poisoning the air with our emissions.
right.
There's nothing about inflating your tires that's going to even minimize that
Right.
effect.
So I didn't know what to expect, and then some friends watched it and they said you have to watch this. It's fabulous, and I did, and I think it is fabulous. And
I thought so too. Hard to watch, but fabulous. I mean, as far as pointing out what's going on, I think it was actually kind of fabulous. I'm like, this is bright green lights. This is bright green lights. You know, it's what we've been covering on all of your appearances here is exactly this.
yeah, and I want to be quick to not claim credit because the truth is that um, I mean, it's not cognitively challenging to see that if you build something that the parts that you build it from come from somewhere, and that somewhere else is somebody's home, and they have to be kicked out of their home and their home destroyed in order for you to be able to build it. Um,
Right.
and so there are. I mean, the good news is that if we can get past our denial and if we can make our loyalty to the real world instead of to um, the industrial economy, then everything is actually pretty straightforward. The big,
Absolutely. Yeah.
the big step is transferring your loyalty away. But once you do that, it's all pretty obvious. I mean, if you ask, do you think that Joshua trees or desert tortoises want to give up their homes so that the industrial economy can have more electricity? I think it's pretty clear. I mean, if your loyalty is with the desert tortoises, it's it's a terrible idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that Jeff Gibbs said in your interview, um, he said what I thought in my childhood was coming true. And when you see like the destruction, and I this is what's really hardcore for me, is like I would see the bulldozers coming in to make a home for humans and destroying what I used to, we had a 3 mile walk to and from our bus stop, and I would see this happening. Like the places, the streams would stop because they dug it up with the bulldozers and tore out all the natural environment. And then what happens to those animals, that those insects and all that called that home. um and I saw it pretty clearly. But I thought it was crazy because the rest of the world wasn't acknowledging it you know
Well, I don't know. Stop me if we've talked about this story before, but that's how I became an environmentalist. Have I told this story?
You probably have, but like I've said before, keep repeating it because it's important.
Well, in second grade, so I was 7, whatever. Um, they put in a subdivision right next to where I lived, and what was a home for meadowlarks and grasshoppers and garter snakes and bull snakes and everybody else
Yes, you've told this story, and I've related very well to that. Yes.
became white box houses. And I realized, even
Mhm.
as a kid, this can't go on forever. You can't have infinite growth on a finite planet. I didn't have that language, but that's the understanding. And I know so many people who will not or cannot go back to where they grew up because it breaks their heart.
Yeah.
I did a talk in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is where my mom grew up and where I was born. And I went to my mom's house where she was a little girl, and she used to. She's born in 1932, and when she was a little girl, she used to. Her grandparents lived across the way a bit, and she used to hop on the back of a cow and ride the cow to her grandparents' house. And when she was 3 and 4, she'd hop up on the fence and then jump on the cow. And that there is not a cow within 15 miles of this place now. It's all tightly packed subdivisions with shopping malls, and this is everybody's story. I can't. I grew up in Colorado, between Boulder and Louisville, and I can't. The last time I was in Boulder was, I don't know, several years ago, and it was just horrifying. I can't go back because it breaks my heart. I left in '83 or '84 because there were getting to be so many people then, and that was nothing compared to now. Um, and this is people have these stories for everywhere. It's just
Yeah.
I don't understand how people don't recognize that this can't go on.
I don't understand it either. And I feel the same way about the place I grew up because it was all dirt roads and there was hardly any houses. They were spread miles apart. And then now suddenly I mean, not suddenly, it seemed suddenly to me, but there's blacktop all the way back, that dirt road that we had to, hike in and out of, or I cross country skied in and out of, or snowmobiled in and out of. Now there's blacktop. You can go there and it's just filled in with houses. It's like, how can we keep filling up these um, areas that used to compose of nature with people? I mean, how can you continue this and not destroy what sustains us?
Well, and for asking that question, you will be labeled eco-fascist, as
Yeah.
Jeff Gibbs has been. Um,
Hmm.
and I mean, it's the level of entitlement that there's in Bright Green Lies. At one point, we talk about. I'm gonna see if I can find this text real fast so I can.
Okay, and when you want to, there's tons of people here who want to probably ask you questions about it. So, um, you collect a big crowd when you're live. So
Well, thank you. I'll find this real fast.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, Deforestation, agriculture, and other land use changes have reduced the global biomass of plants by more than 50%. The numbers are equally stark for animals. One paper notes that even the largest species of wild terrestrial vertebrates now have aggregate zoomass that's only a small fraction of the global anthropomass, the global mass of humans. Minuscule remnants of once enormous herds of bison, America's largest surviving mega herbivore, total only about 40,000 tons of carbon. The latest continent-wide count of African elephants enumerated 470,000 individuals in 2006. With an average body mass of 2.6 tons, this equals about 0.5% of the global anthropomass. And even a liberal estimate of the total zoomass of wild terrestrial mammals at the beginning and the end of the 20th century yields no more than 50 megatons of live weight, about 10 megatons of carbon, in 1900 and 25 megatons of live weight in 2000, a decline of about 50%. In contrast, during the same time, the global anthropomass rose from roughly 13 to a little bit under 55 megatons of carbon. This means that the global anthropomass surpassed the wild mammalian terrestrial zoomass sometime during the second half of the 19th century. By 1900, it was at least 30% higher, and that by 2000, the zoomass of all wild land mammals was only about a tenth of the global anthropomass. When you include the biomass of pets and domesticated livestock, the gap between wild and human widens even further. The lost animal biomass, which is not really biomass, but rather living beings, has, like the plant biomass, been turned into greenhouse gases, material goods, livestock, and humans. It's no exaggeration to say that civilization is consuming the planet. And
Yeah.
I mean, check that out. The mass of humans on the planet is what, 10 times the mass of wild terrestrial mammals.
That's crazy.
And
Totally
anyone's not completely freaked out by that, I don't even know what to say to them.
Me either. Honestly, I don't know what to say to them. Jean says I became an environmental activist because of the creek in the forest near my childhood home. I think there's a lot of us that have observed what's going on where we grew up, and that's how we became so strong in our feelings that humans can't continue in this growth. We just can't, and we are. And I don't know if it's too. I'm pretty damn sure it's too late. I'm really frustrated. How much longer do you think we can continue this? Because people like you and me, we're speaking out against it, but we're not making any progress with the greater good, and they're suppressing the planet of the humans, which was another comment, and I wish I would have caught it when it was happening. But they're really suppressing the message from Planet of the Humans, and I'm sure they're going to do that with Bright Green Lies as well.
Well, they are already suppressing. I mean, they were suppressing it before, using everything they could to try to smear it, and then just today, they got it removed from YouTube on a copyright strike. For there's 24 seconds of material that Gibbs condensed to 4 seconds. And that's totally fair use. I mean, if they allow this to be taken down for that basically, I mean, no documentary will be safe.
Right.
And, the point is that, yes, they are attempting to smear it any way they can and to just lie about it. And I will be glad to use a non-vulgar term. What are the rules on swearing here? Is swearing okay or not?
Yes, swearing's fine.
Okay. One of the reviewers, because he talks about the fact that there are too many humans and there are too many humans who are consuming too much, he just talks about it. He doesn't actually present any solutions. And it has been passed around now as gospel that because one person said this, now everybody is saying it, that his solution is for, quote, Africans not to fuck. end quote. And he doesn't, the only solution he presents to population is educating women, educating girls, and giving women reproductive freedom, which is not draconian. It's not evil. It's
No.
forced abortions. And, and yet, I mean, they've been able to get by with this because they're living in an echo chamber. I want to go back to the creek behind that person's house, and like you say, there are so many people who have that, and that's another thing that makes me concerned and has made me concerned for decades is that people. I mean, I saw a study 10, 12 years ago that um, the average kid now spends 8 minutes a day outside, and that's I mean, if it took you,
Disturbing.
it was a mile and a half for you to walk to the bus. I mean, that's more than 8 minutes right there. And I only had to walk a little ways, but I mean, I spent more than 8 minutes just waiting for the bus every day. And
Me
also,
too.
I'm sure that a lot of your listeners will like this. When I was a kid, all summer, basically, my mom would fix me some snacks in the morning. I would head out into the meadows, and then she wouldn't hear from me again until I'd probably come back for lunch, and then she wouldn't hear from me again until dinner time. And and you can always hear this at dinner. I'd forgotten about this, but at dinner, around 5, 6, or whenever it is, you could hear all through the area all these mothers shouting out the names of their kids. Um, Jeff, Derrick, and it's because we were outside all the time. They didn't just walk into the TV room and say, "Come out for dinner."
I resemble that. I mean, but only I didn't go back for lunch. We didn't have lunch served to us. So we stayed out all day from, we might eat cereal in the morning and then come back, about 7. But we were gone all day. My parents didn't care. And I loved it. I was in the mountains and I would travel as far as I could and climb rocks and stuff and observe nature. That's the best thing in the world.
Back in the '90s, I knew this woman who was a teacher, and she a teacher of elementary school children, and she was really horrified. And this is in Spokane, so it's not like a huge city. It's 300,000 in the metro area at that point. So it's there's still country around. Anyway, there were lots of students that she would take them to the arboretum, and um, and they would run terrified from butterflies because they thought they were going to get stung.
What, from butterflies? By the
Yeah,
way, Oz, pull up questions to find them for me because I'm too interested in listening to Derrick to find them. So sorry.
so
Okay, sorry, Derrick.
the point is that this just makes me. I mean, if we became environmentalists by watching what was going on outside, what? Oh, it's like I noticed that uh, near. I don't live at my house anymore. I live at my mom's house. But when I was living at my house, there was a pond nearby, and I noticed that the the Pacific tree frogs were more and more quiet in the pond outside my home. And I started wondering about this, and I started asking other local people if they had heard a decline in Pacific tree frogs. And for the most part, people had, it's like, these are adults. There are tree frogs outside. They had no idea. And you can't miss tree frogs. I mean, they're very loud. And,
Wow.
and my point is, I guarantee that if the San Francisco 49ers disappeared, everybody would know. Everybody would pay, because that's what they pay attention to. But if I talk about the tree frogs having some problems, then that's they don't even know what I'm talking about. And I just have to say, since I brought this up, that it ends up that the tree frogs were not. It wasn't a real big problem. What it was, I also noticed that there were more red-legged frogs in the pond, and red-legged frogs are bigger and they eat tree frogs, and red-legged frogs require better habitat. So the pond, when I moved in there, the pond was not in particularly good shape, and the habitat improved very much over the years. And so basically, this was just natural succession in this case, so people don't need to worry about that. But I was worried for several years, and that's another thing, is that if you're not outside, you're not going to notice these things. You're not going to notice. I mean, that's been one of uh, the uh, the wonderful things about living in this place for 20 years is watching. Um, oh, for example, I have no idea why this happened, but for a couple years, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, there was this explosion of redwood millipedes. Redwood millipedes are pretty cool because, well, for many reasons. One of them is if you touch them, your fingers stink because they release hydrogen cyanide. That's their defense.
Mhm.
Um, anyway, so for a couple years there was a ton of them, and that was making me really happy because they're supposed to be in this forest. But then I haven't seen any for the last 5 or 6 years. So I'm like, why not? I have no idea if that's a big deal or not. But the point is, I'm outside every day and I notice that.
Mhm.
And that's really cool what Jean just said about with the wildlife school, where they're out mucking about outside, rain or shine. I mean, that's so important for children.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like it was a big influence on me. So,
You know, have we talked about Paul Shepard? I don't think we have. Paul Shepard talked about this, how important it was that children at a certain developmental age, um, everything is about categorization.
mhm.
That's when children are learning to parse and to learn to be able to tell the differences between things and to categorize those things. Of course, that corresponds with the explosion uh, in their vocabulary. And he made a really big deal about how important it was for. I mean, we evolved in the wild, and we evolved out being able to, as we are developmentally at the age where we are learning those categories, then we are also seeing nature and seeing that rushes are round and sedges have edges. You know, that's like just the classic childhood thing that we're supposed to pick up and to be able to differentiate and to make those categories. And that is an evolved part of our life. And if we're doing it inside, what we're going to do is to be able to differentiate very well between one type of computer and another, but not
Mhm.
be able to tell a rush from a sedge. And
Right.
and John Livingston talked about that, and this was something that was incredibly influential to me. That he talked about cities. Normally, when I think of cities, I think of places of sensory overload. Because when I go to a city, I just like if I'm on tour,
Mhm.
at the end of my event, I go back to the hotel and I shut the windows and turn the lights off because I just had too much stimulation, too many sharp corners, too much concrete,
I relate to that a lot.
too much human interaction too, frankly. And that's, but he says they're not just places of sensory stimulation, but also places of sensory deprivation. Because he says that basically a city, or how most of us live most of the time, is a place of sensory deprivation. What he means is that, like right now, how many of your perceptions, this is not a rhetorical question, how many of your perceptions are either created by or mediated by humans as opposed to directly from a non-human? I mean, right now, I see a wall of books, I see a house, I see two domesticated dogs, I see which are products of humans, really.
Mhm.
I see some domesticated plants. I look out through the window, and then I've got some wild plants out there. There are some wild plants out there, but the point is that if all of your perceptions all of the time are either created by or mediated by humans, you can come to believe that humans are the only ones who exist. You can come to believe, as John Livingston said, you can come to start hallucinating because that's what you do in an echo chamber. And John Livingston believes that believed, he's dead now, believed that most of our ideologies are hallucinations. And at first that was really hard for me to grasp, but then the more I thought about it, it's like they spend every day paying attention to the stock market as opposed
Mhm.
to the health of the real world. And the health of the real world and Planet of the Humans is just such a great the res, the response to Planet of the Humans has been such a great actually, what I should say is the whole bright green movement is a great example of that. But the bright greens explicitly say that we are trying to save civilization. We're not trying to save the planet. They're trying to save this human creation because I just read this thing by Bill McKibben a couple of days ago where he says that he wants to allow the human story to continue for another generation. Well, first off, the human story was not civilization. I mean, the Talawa lived here for 12,000 years. And second, what about the blue whale story? What about all the other stories? And Naomi Klein says that she's been to a whole bunch more climate marches than she can count, but the polar bears still don't do it for her. And in the book, we keep referring to that line over and over because polar bears do it for me, and buried thrushes do it for me, and
All of them do it for, I call it the matrix. Like, I finally figured out what people were talking about. The matrix. The matrix is the people's invented reality, not reality. Like, it's all a human construct. It's not real. Nature is real. That
yep,
is not real.
yep, yeah, I completely agree. And we are so immersed in the matrix that we forget that reality is real. In fact, postmodernism itself, postmodernism is a modern postmodern philosophy, suggests that all there are these various forms of discourse, and there is no reality underlying any of them. It's completely nuts.
Yeah.
Um,
There is reality. It's called what nature created. That's reality.
yeah,
It's
I mean, the reality is, okay, so when I taught at Eastern Washington University back in the 90s, I was next door to an office with this philosophy teacher who, the guy drove me crazy. He would constantly say that humans are the only beings who create value, and that whales only have value because humans say they have value. And if humans say they don't have value, they don't have value. Because the only things that have value are things we say. And I was like, no, they have value to the world. And he's like, no, the only value they have to the world is the value we assign to them. And what I always wanted to do, I never did this, of course, because this would be very mean, but what I always wanted to do is I wanted to take a hammer into his office and I wanted to smash it as hard as I could on his thumb and then say, now, you tell me that not having your thumb smashed by a hammer does not have intrinsic value.
yeah, it does.
It
Absolutely.
does. We are embodied creatures. That's who we are, is we are our bodies. And we, we age, we get older, we die. That's life. And I just did a deep green video yesterday. I don't know when it'll be released about how, and I'm not planning on dying soon, but when I die, I really would like to be taken and put out in the forest and eaten by bears and everybody else. And
Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I mean, to take the religious viewpoint, I don't think enough religious people understand that concept. I
food
mean,
to food.
yeah, like you're putting yourself back into the earth and helping the rest of the planet be sustainable, not preserving yourself in formaldehyde and poisoning the planet, instead feeding the earth.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I try to do that, and I've told my kids that I don't want to be preserved. I don't want that draconian method of formaldehyde and crap and burying myself in a casket. I don't want that. Like, cremate me or natural bury me. Don't make me pollutant to this planet.
Yeah. Well,
It's disgusting.
and I understand the public health reasons that people, especially in cities, can't just be laid out. I understand that.
But they can be cremated.
I really, yeah, I very much want to just be laid out. They stole Ed Abbey's body after he died. Friends of his stole his body and took it out in the desert.
Wow.
That's great. So,
Yeah.
hint, hint. That's what I want you to do when I die.
That's awesome. I
I
mean,
don't really like the desert very much. I mean, I respect it, and I love that, and I can see its beauty. But I'm a forest person. I want to become part of a forest instead of a desert.
I like both the desert and the forest. I appreciate both of them, But I was raised in the high desert, so I have an appreciation. Okay, Oz says he's the last a 1 minute video to run to ask Derrick this question. His question, can we do that? Do you want to do that? Are you okay with that?
Hmm?
Okay, go ahead, run it.
Yeah, I showed this morning, and I saw it last Friday, and I was shocked, and I shouldn't be because I do know I have a little bit of science in my background. But here goes. I just want your opinion, Derrick, on this.
What happened to the sound, Oz?
Yeah, it was unconscionable to me that we have that much or that little water to work with in what we're doing. I just wanted your opinion on that. That's all. Thank you for letting me do that.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing it. And I completely agree. And um, a couple of things. One of them is that, and 90% of the water used by humans goes for agriculture and industry. So a lot of the water is used for, not even for drinking or bathing. And that's one thing. The next thing is, for decades, I have been rhetorically asking, who's the idiot who came up with the great idea of putting poison on our own food, pesticides? And likewise, we can ask the same question: who's the idiot who came up with the idea of poisoning groundwater and poisoning rivers? I mean, that's just remarkable. And and an interview that I want to do for my resistance radio program, and I just haven't found the right person, is I want to do an interview about uh, aquifers as wild communities, because it's not just water down in an aquifer. There are all sorts of beings who live there. And so people talk about, oh, we're going to run out of water in the Oglala aquifer. That's not like taking food out of your refrigerator where, it's already dead. It's not reducing a store. That is just like I was saying for mining, that is already somebody's home. And I just don't even know enough about the subject to be able to know who I should interview about that. But I want to introduce the notion of aquifers as living communities to the public. So that's another thing. And then just generic, and having to do with the ocean water. I've said this before. I don't know if I've said it on here, but I think that if people were to list the accomplishments of industrial society, going to the moon, I don't know, making an interstate highway system, I think the most impressive accomplishment of this entire industrial system is that they are in the process of effectively killing the oceans. And
that's sad.
If you said to somebody 3,000 years ago, so 3,000 years from now, there will be a human on the moon. One of these is true, one of them's a lie. There'll be a human on the moon, or the oceans will be effectively dead. They would believe there'd be somebody on the moon before they would believe the other, because the oceans, there were so many whales in the oceans in some places that it would always be foggy with their breath. And there were so many fish in the North Banks that it was an impediment to ships. Ships would actually slow down because they're running into all the fish. And there were so many fish on the Hudson River that if you threw a net in, they would carry your net away. And it's stunning to me. Or when Europeans arrived in San Francisco Bay, they said that the bay was, quote, paved, end quote, with sea lions. And the utter fecundity of the oceans that has been just devastated. Anyway, so yeah, I think I water. I say all the time that land is everything, and that's true. But it's also true that water is everything. And if you wanted to argue with me and say that water is more important than land, I think I would probably lose.
Probably. Okay, I want you to comment on one thing. I'm sorry, if I interrupted your thought, you're free to finish before I go on. Okay, so one thing that Jeff Gibbs said in your interview was nature dies first. And that resonated a lot, and it's heartbreaking, but as we're trying to find new ways to sustain humans and not trying to sustain the planet, nature dies first. And I don't know, comments on that, thoughts?
Okay, so here's the thing, is that it is generally acknowledged that, I mean, it's a cliche that addicts don't change until they hit bottom. That if someone is a heroin addict, they do it for a reason. They do it because, well, as I used to teach at a prison, and it's a cliche too, but my students they say, when I first took meth or heroin, whichever, I took it because it felt good, and then by the end I was taking it so I wouldn't feel bad. And whatever the truth of that is, we've heard that addicts don't change till they hit bottom. And the problem is that when you get someone who is addicted to control and power, they're not the one who hits bottom. It's their victims who hit bottom. Yeah. And so this is one reason that perpetrators of domestic violence have such a high rate of recidivism and such a low rate of stopping, because they're not the ones hitting bottom. It's their wife and their kids or their husband. It's the person being abused who's hitting bottom. And right. Seeing here that all of these bright greens can go on blithely about how polar bears don't do it for them.
That's disgusting.
And as nature gets killed, they don't care, because their addiction is still getting fulfilled. Their addiction to power and control over the planet. And so yes, nature is bleeding out before our eyes, being skinned alive before our eyes. And hey, computers are way faster than they ever used to be, and we didn't even have computers when I was a kid. And you want to give up on that? And I just did an interview not very long ago with a couple of journalists who, I laid out my basic stuff about how this way of life is not sustainable, and they kept saying to me, but people don't want to give up on their golf courses. They don't want to give up on any of this stuff. And I said, I agree with you, but that's not the point. The point is not what we want. I'm sure that there are many little children who want ponies for Christmas, but that doesn't mean they're going to get them.
Right.
The point is not what we want. The point is what the world will allow and what the world can support and can afford. And they just kept insisting. They were getting kind of mad at me. And I didn't think of this at the moment. I've thought of this other times, but I didn't say this that night. That it's like, okay, so let's say that I don't have a job, and we're all in the capitalist system here. We're gonna take that as a given for a minute. And the way I make money in order to pay rent and everything else is by I'm a really good hacker and I hack into all my neighbors' bank accounts and steal their money. And then somebody says to me, hey, you should stop stealing from all your neighbors. I was like, no, I like this lifestyle. And
Oh, sorry. That's just a perfect analogy. Thank you. God, that's perfect. Go ahead, finish.
oh, well, that's it. That's what we're doing. We're stealing from everybody and everything. And then when somebody points out, we're stealing from everybody and everything, then then other people, the thieves, get really mad and say, how dare you say that this lifestyle can't continue forever? I mean, I think about this another way. But think about a family. I never had kids, so I didn't experience this. But I mean, did you ever have, at the very least, if you didn't have this, others have, where sometimes a teenager might, how do I say this, have eyes bigger than their wallet, and so they might spend too much money and then come to you for more money, and at some point you say, no, you can't have any more, then they get really mad at you.
Yep.
I mean,
that's the whole human population. I need more.
That's the point. I mean, this whole thing has been based on theft from the land and from the water for several thousand years now. And people get really, really upset when you say to them, I'm sorry, you can't keep stealing. And here's something I haven't said in this context before, but I've always found really interesting. Have you ever noticed that if you loan somebody some money and then they don't give it back to you and then you ask for it back, that they get mad at you? Mm-hmm. That's always struck me as kind of weird, because I did you the favor of loaning you the money and now I need it back. So there's no reason for you to be pissed because you actually had it for that, year and a half or something. And it's the same thing here, that we collectively, we as a society are really collectively upset. We're so angry and outraged that the debts that we've been running up for a long time now are coming due.
And just not like economic debts. We're talking about debts to nature.
I'm talking about ecological debts, which have been paid already by the passenger pigeon. I'm not just saying they're coming due. The point is, we're now noticing them, and we're noticing that we can't continue this party forever. And they're getting really desperate. And they say very explicitly, I mean, Lester Brown has come up with Plan B 4.0 to save civilization. He never came up with Plan B 4.70 to save the salmon or to save the oceans.
Which is what's necessary to save the humans. And
yeah,
humans can just go. I mean, I think the planet would be better off if humans would just go, but that's a hard road to travel. And to even say, because you'll be censored like no other if you say humans just have to go.
Well, did we talk before about the thing with my mom cleaning my room?
Yeah, say it again. It's a really good one. Yeah.
Because that has to do with this. It's like, I'll put it a different way, that when I would talk about the necessity of bringing down civilization before it kills the planet, a lot of people would say, well, gosh, what about all the people who are going to die? And I would say, well, first off, what people are you talking about? You talking about the hammerhead shark people? You talking about the Coho salmon people, the Delta smell people? Because they're already dying. And then I would say, you're talking about the dispossessed farmers in India who've been kicked off their land because they're now growing dog food and tulips to export to Europe? Or do they don't count either? And so I'd go through all those. And then what I would finally come to is, look, if what you're really talking about is you're concerned about the lives of people, the global elite, you're worried about, which is us, anybody in the United States, pretty much is a member of the global elite, even the pretty poor in the United States, compared to many people. Anyway, human people. Anyway, so if your primary concern really is for them, then here's the thing, is we probably agree that civilization is going to come down at some point. If we don't agree with that, then we have nothing to say to each other.
Right.
But if we agree that civilization is going to come down at some point, and if your primary concern really is for the health and safety of the people who are alive during or after that crash, then what you need to do is to start preparing people for that crash. You need to start relocalizing food systems. You need to start working um, on preparing society for that, not coming to my talks and getting mad at me for stating the obvious.
Yeah.
That's what we're seeing with Planet of the Humans too. He stated the obvious, and
there's a lot of anger. It's like, no, we don't mean there needs to be lots of, I mean, just the people covering it. They're talking about anti-human population issues and the people interviewing them. It's like, you don't mean we need to cut down the human population, because that's fine. When you hear that, it's like, are you kidding me? You don't see this? It's the big picture. I mean, it made my husband wake up to it. It's like, holy fuck, we do have a problem, and it was just amazing that it woke people up. I wish he could have read your book, but he won't read your book. Thank you for posting Jean's question. We'll lay you down in the forest, Derrick, she says.
And the bears and vultures will thank you too.
Yes, thank you. Keep putting, like, anything directed to Derrick, post it up here so he can respond when he has a breath in between his points. Because God, I just love hearing Derrick talk. So I'm sorry if I don't break in more.
No,
I appreciate all the people making comments. There's a lot. So it's hard, Derrick, when you're on, because people like you. So it's what it is.
I just wanted to jump here real quick. Jean has another comment. Derrick, thank you for acknowledging that the U.S. level of living exclamation. Mm-hmm. People I've noticed myself, they don't get that at all. It's so myopic. The sphere of the American, attitude about stuff. You just nailed it. So thanks for putting that out there.
They don't want to lose their convenience or their toys. Like, that's it.
That's the point. Is, it's extraordinary to me that, electricity is really one of the things that we're talking about with all this bright green stuff. And industrial electricity was not a thing even 120 years ago. Humans existed for almost all of our existence without it. And we don't need it. It's nice. I mean, I like hot showers. I like space heaters. But that doesn't.
You like the medical conveniences that keep you alive? Like,
yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that doesn't alter the fact that it is not necessary for human life to continue. And in fact, it is inimical. It is in opposition to life on the planet continuing. I keep thinking all the time about the title of one Doobie Brothers album, which was, I believe, what were once vices are now habits. And, what was once a convenience is now a necessity. And that's just extraordinary. And we need to start any discussion with the understanding of that. What do humans need to survive? What we need is clean water, clean air, clean soil, healthy land bases that support us. That's the bottom line. This is something I said for decades now, is that what do all the so-called solutions by the mainstream to global warming have in common? And what they all have in common is they take industrial capitalism as a given, and the natural world is having to conform to industrial capitalism.
That can't happen. That doesn't work.
That's solving for the wrong variable. The independent variable is the land. The land has, because without land you don't have any social system whatsoever. So the land has to be more important than your social system. And any social system has to recognize that the land and water, and I need to start changing that, the land and water are primary.
Absolutely. The natural world is. Book Hermit says, I value the quality of life far more than the quantity. 100,000 healthy, happy people per planet means more to me than supporting 50 billion, which is possible in the horror show situation. I'm not sure 50 billion is possible, but okay, Book, we love you. And Sandy had a really good comment too. Sandy from Environmental Coffee House, it's not humans we do not like, it's the ability to feel greed, destroy the planet, and hate that are the traits we don't like. I love people. Not all though, yeah. I think we've all experienced that, Sandy. I love this community. I'll just say that. This is the best community ever.
That's a really interesting thing too, that it's really frustrating how absurd a lot of our discourse is, including people talk about tribalism as though it's a bad thing, and they relate tribalism to all sorts of terrible things. But what's the number? Duncan's number, something like that. I can't remember the person's name, but there's an anthropologist who figured out the largest number of people you can have in a community and still have it be democratic and have face-to-face interactions. About 120. That once a community gets beyond that size, it can no longer maintain those person-to-person interactions and to have those informal power structures.
I've talked about that on my show. That's so amazing you say that. I'm like, you need, the people in charge need to know individually every single person in that community.
Yep.
I think that's very important, because then they actually will care about them if they know them.
Well, this is, I don't know if we've talked about this, but this is a huge thing that Lewis Mumford, and anybody who hasn't read Lewis Mumford, read Lewis Mumford. Lewis Mumford wrote about what he called the mega machine. And the mega machine is, I think, the single most important invention that humans have ever created. More important than gunpowder, the wheel, the screw, and the lever. Of course, I don't know that humans invented all those. But anyway, the mega machine is a society, it's a machine composed of human parts. It is a machine composed. Okay, among the first mega machines were the construction armies used to build the pyramids, which not coincidentally were necropolises. And the mega machine is a way to organize people hierarchically such that the individuals are cogs in this machine and they don't matter. And it's a top-down bureaucratic military style organization. And the reason that Mumford said this was so important, and the reason I think this is the most important invention humans have ever created, and by important, I don't mean good, I mean it's been the most destructive too, is that humans are fundamentally contentious. And we're fundamentally small community, we evolved in small communities. And it's a miracle. I mean, anybody who's ever tried to organize a potluck knows how difficult it can be to get 20 people to work together simply for a 2-hour meal. And so it's extraordinary when they can get 1 million people in an army or 10 million people in an army to basically get along well enough to invade another country, or for a work army to work well enough to deliver Coca-Cola all over the planet. That's an extraordinary, extraordinary accomplishment. And it is also profoundly anti-human and profoundly anti-democratic and profoundly anti-life. What it's good at is putting in place huge projects. And anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. Just I think that
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it is.
That the acknowledgement of the mega machine, which, by the way, Lewis Mumford did not think that life would survive the mega machine, and I agree with him.
Yeah, I don't think it will. Which kind of reminds me of something I wanted you to cover. I mean, we're like, I don't know how long you want to go, and I'll go as long as you want. What's that?
What time is it?
It is 4 minutes to the hour.
Okay, I'm gonna have to quit about 5 after.
Okay, so let's go through this really quick. I don't know if you've ever seen the History Channel series Alone, but I think it was really interesting. I've watched it because it's really interesting to me to see the hunter-gatherer just put into action, like, and being documented. And what strikes me with that is it's like how quickly the the environment that they're placed into, because they put people into, I don't know if you've seen it, but they put people into these remote locations and just expect them to live off the land. How quickly they diminish the resources where they're at. I think the biggest one was like, so far that I've watched, was like a little bit over 80 days. And then they were done. They would have starved to death if they went any further. So, with how many people we have on this planet, it's not really realistic for everyone to go out there. I think a lot of people from the city would die off so quickly. They would be just gone in 30 days. I just don't think they could survive. What is your thought about that? I mean, I know and talking to you and so many other people in this realm, like that's what they want us to go back to, but it's really not realistic with the population we have. But God, what do we do? I mean, I want that to be, because that would be living more closely with nature, but we can't do it with the population we have and how we've diminished wildlife at this point. What the hell do we do, Derrick? Help me. Help me figure this out.
It's like a doctor friend of mine says, that the first step toward proper treatment is correct diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And I think the first thing we do is we have to tell the truth to ourselves and to others. And we've seen that when you even mention the word population in a film about high technology, that you get accused of not wanting African people to fuck. And people tell you all sorts of lies, or people tell all sorts of lies about it. So the first thing we need to do, so the point I'm getting at is that, I mean, it's like the AA statement. The first step is to recognize that there's a problem. And I mean, for God's sake, when the population starts going down in Russia or Japan, they give what are called sex holidays to send workers home to have sex with the hope that they'll have children.
Yeah, to build the economy. And that doesn't help anything.
Yeah, so the point is that we need to first recognize that the planet itself exists, and it is a bounded sphere. It has limits. There are no more frontiers. We have to recognize that. I mean, for crying out loud, if you limit their food supply, earthworms limit the number of babies they have, and they don't even have a brain. And they do have 3 hearts, though, so maybe that's an advantage for them.
Maybe.
The point is that the first thing we do is to recognize there's a problem, because if we don't recognize a problem, we can't come up with any solutions at all. And I've said this before, that if I was actually in charge, I would not deindustrialize overnight. If I was in charge, I would go for the low-hanging fruit first. I would get rid of golf courses and get rid of
stadiums with automatic roofs.
I would get rid of all that crap first. And I would also change subsidies, because capitalism is based on subsidies. And yes, capitalism needs to go, but in the meantime, I would take the money that is put on the subsidies that are given to timber companies to deforest, and I don't even care. I give it to the same timber companies to help them, to have them reforest. I would give construction companies money to take out dams. I mean, that's what I would do if I was doing this. But all this presumes that our loyalty is to the natural world. I want to say one more thing. I just said the thing about subsidizing timber companies. I just want to mention, people need to know this, that there is a national forest series of timber sales in Wyoming right now that are more than 300,000 acres. 300,000 acres that they want to, quote, treat, which means deforest.
That sucks. I love Wyoming so much. That hurts my heart.
And that's happening right now, that they're proposing the timber sales, and those will all be subsidized. So if I was in charge, the first thing I would do, change those subsidies. And every cell in my body wants for there to be a voluntary transformation, but I don't believe there's going to be a voluntary transformation. And I used to ask people at my talks, do you believe this culture will undergo a voluntary transformation of sane, sustainable way of living? Out of tens of thousands of people that I asked over the decades, nobody ever said yes. One time at a talk, a guy raised his hand. He said, oh, voluntary. No, of course not. And the point is that if you don't believe this culture is going to have a voluntary transformation, and if you care primarily about the natural world, my solution is the way you win a war is by destroying the enemy's capacity to wage war. And war has been declared on the natural world. And those of us who care about the natural world, I think we need to destroy the industrial capacity to destroy the world. And what that means ultimately is going after the industrial infrastructure.
Right. And you have your critics on that. I am in between, but I'm more leaning towards you, and because you start to think about what's going to happen when everybody's set loose on the environment. But I think more people are going to die. I think city people are just going to
That's where we come back to what I said before. That if anybody's big deal is that they don't like that idea at all, that's great. Then what you need to do is to protect specific pieces of ground where you live, and also to relocalize food systems.
I'm a big proponent of relocalizing food systems. There are a few comments I in the chat. I asked for anyone to, because we only have a couple minutes. You have 2 minutes left, so I want, as much as I want to keep asking you questions, because I could ask you questions all day. I have a whole other page list of things I wanted to ask you, but I want to turn it over to the chatters. And Oz, there's some questions in there if you want to pull them up for Derrick. I can read Jean's right now. Jean says, Derrick, what are you reading right now, and what projects are you involved in? Okay. Jean's a huge fan of yours, by the way.
Well, thank you, Jean. And two things. One is, embarrassingly enough, I mainly read crap. I mainly read mystery novels or thrillers.
Sometimes you need a break from the reality that's.
And I'm reading a really good one right now. It's Philip Pullman. And he wrote the Dark Matter series. Anyway, it's a good book. So that's what I'm reading. And then also I'm doing research. One of the books I'm working on right now, I'm working on 2 books right now. One of them is about stopping rape culture, but that one is sort of on the back burner while I finish the other one. I'm almost done with a book on how marijuana legalization has primarily been a transfer of wealth from family farmers to the already wealthy. And it really was not about freeing the weed. And it's just a smaller book that I live in Northern California, so I know a lot about this culture. So I decided to write that. That's the book I'm working on now. I'll be done with that book in another maybe 2 months, and then I'll go back to the book on rape culture, and then I'm going to write a book about my mom's death and how we don't have a really good relationship with death. And then after that, I'm going to write a book about how I think that when people tell you not to feed wild animals, that they're wrong.
Awesome. I can't wait to see that one. And I just really wish you had the bright green lights like out there before this. But I'm supposed to ask you about lab meat from Bio. What do you think about lab meat?
I don't think we should eat anything from labs.
I tend to agree. Oh, Cindy Seeley says thank you for having this interview with us. We are at 2 hours and 5 minutes. Color and Trees says thank you for doing this, Mr. Jensen and any all that assist you. So I love our audience.
Wait. What's the comment from Environmental Coffee House? Escape with Lord Hugh, as long as you don't. Oh no, it's You Are Dumbass. I thought.
Yeah, Lord Hugh. Do you know who Lord Hugh? You Are a Dumbass. He's awesome. He's pretty fun.
Yeah, I did an interview with him. I thought I only read the first Escape with Lord, and I thought he was going to tell me about the dark matter, because there's a Lord somebody or another in the book I'm reading.
Oh, really? Yeah. He's really part of our community. We love him. And Torstein is who he was responding to. He said, Torstein says, I grew up next to the Bergen Aquarium. I hope I'm pronouncing that. It must be why I love fish and sea creatures. Torstein lives in Greenland. That's Going South is his channel name. Osama's here. Love you guys. Oh my gosh. Color and Trees. Thank you for joining us. That's a new person here. Vegematic, good to see you again. Jean, Bio, Escape. Lord Hugh, thank you so much for popping in here. It's always good to see you. Sandy, Environmental Coffee House. She says, woo wee, Derrick. So,
thank you so much for all that.
Kim Centeno. What did you say? Okay. Hemp is a great solution. I have mixed feelings. We'll talk about that another time. I love hemp. I think it's great. It's fast growing and stuff. Book Hermit, thank you so much for all your contribution. Even if we disagree at times, I love you anyway. Poetry Yoga Radical Ecofeminist. I saw her on a comment of one of your earlier, like a thing you just posted a week ago. And I'm like, come watch Derrick. And she's like a viewer. So it's really cool to see multiple viewers that watch both of us. So love you guys. I think Derrick needs to get out of here. I kind of kept him 2 minutes over when he needed to go. Good. So we got to get out of here. We'll just do the outro. And thank you so much, Derrick, for joining me. I really appreciate it every single time you come.
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, already can't wait till the next time. I always say that. Have a good day, everybody. Love you guys so much. And we'll see you soon.